Joining us now is Dorothy Engelman, and she is the founder of a website called GetInvolved.ca. And first things first, how do you like what we've done with the place?
I think it looks great. I love the new colors. The set looks great.
I ask you that, of course, because
I worked here before.
You used to work here once upon a time.
And I still feel like I'm part of the place. I have a partnership with TVO, and Get Involved is part of that partnership.
Well, let's start there. We are in the middle of National Volunteer Week.
Right.
Which means what?
A National Volunteer Week is a time for us all to celebrate volunteers. And in Canada today, StatsCan estimates that almost $30 billion is volunteered into our economy through the acts of people who take the time to give back of their time and their talent.
So without that $30 billion, or I guess if we had to pay for that $30 billion,
yeah,
we'd literally be up the creek, wouldn't we?
Well, we might have a few more fighter jets, right?
We're not talking politics here, Dorothy. Okay. But since you bring it up, I guess voting is part of citizen engagement.
Absolutely.
Volunteering part of citizen engagement?
Absolutely. And I think, it's very instructive right now that we have an upcoming election here in Ontario. We have an election federally. And I think that I like to think of volunteering as active citizenship, as a way of being engaged. I think there's some old sort of definitions of volunteerism, but I like to think of being volunteering as a way that we get involved in our communities and as citizens. And so I like to think of it as, sort of active citizenship. That's what volunteering means to me.
And when you say we, how many of us are actually doing it?
They estimate that almost 88% of Canadians volunteer in some sort of way.
That's great.
And so really in a traditional volunteering sector, I think there's probably about 55% of Canadians that volunteer. But when you think about people who coach hockey or who carpool or who help out at their local school, when you add all those kinds of somewhat unconventional types of volunteering, I think you'd see in the high 80%.
Let's do a little kind of past and present here.
Right.
When you think of the traditional volunteering of the past, of our
Right.
childhood, what comes to mind?
Well, I think that traditionally, if you look at the demographics, the largest group of volunteers used to be over 65. So you had people who were retiring, and once they retired, that was their time to give back. And although there were other segments of the population that were volunteering, today you now see a very big drop in that number of people over 65, because that was in the year 2000. Now, those people are older and they're exiting the volunteer sector. And what we have is we have a bit of a crisis in terms of the volunteer sector. So this information comes from a report that was done by Volunteer Canada and Manulife Financial, trying to identify what were some of the problem areas. How can we get through the next sort of 10 years when we look to the future and figure out how are we going to be able to make up those volunteers that are leaving the volunteer sector?
Is this to say that the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club, the Lions Club, these kinds of groups are not kind of as influential or as as pervasive in society as they once were?
I think in smaller communities they are still very, very important, and I think they're very cohesive in terms of bringing communities together. But what we're seeing is, so right now when you look at volunteering, there's a whole bunch of barriers to volunteering, and one of them is time. Over 75% of Canadians say, I don't have the time to volunteer. The next thing that they don't want to do is they don't want to make a commitment. They don't want to have to go every Wednesday from 2 to 4 to do something. And then the third thing is a lot of people can't find volunteer opportunities. So when you put all those three things together, you say, well, can we bridge the gap? How can we bridge the gap and start to deliver things that will allow more people to volunteer? And so that has a lot to do with the kind of the way or the mechanism that we built Get Involved. We built Get Involved in order to fill that gap.
We're going to go there in just a second, but I want to find out more about why people do it. I understand why you'd want to be on the receiving end of
Right.
somebody volunteering, but
Yeah.
why do volunteers do it?
Well, I think of volunteers sort of fitting into sort of three buckets. Statistically, most people volunteer because they care about a cause. The second reason people volunteer is because there's an opportunity to use their skills or their expertise. And then the third reason people volunteer is because they're either trying to gain skills or they're trying to find some sort of social cohesion, networking, feel part of their community. And so when we did the series Get Involved on TV Ontario, we found that that was pretty much true. We did profiles on amazing individuals. So we had people like the Florences, who were people who were born with triplets, who all had cystic fibrosis. And when that happened to that family, that became their cause. And so now they raise money for neurological disorders, and that's sort of how they got involved. Then you'll meet people who have incredible skills and expertise. Someone like Raul Singh, who's a paramedic, who's doing all kinds of amazing emergency care work in Haiti and in damaged areas, where there's been earthquake or tornadoes, tsunamis. And he's always first on the ground because as a paramedic, it's something he knows, something he's good at, and he decided to take his cause and do something with it. And then I think the third kind of volunteering is when you're sort of filling a gap. When you notice that there's something that's out there that's not being addressed. Someone like Nazneen Afzinjani, she is an incredible woman who's running an organization called Stop Childhood Executions. And she's a Persian woman who was Canada's Miss World Canada, and she was a recording artist, and someone wrote her a letter and said, my daughter is being incarcerated in Iran and she's going to be executed. So she decided to take this on as a cause, and she now works with the United Nations and with UNICEF. So I think there's lots of different ways that we get involved, but those are, I think, the three major reasons.
I met that one young female student who's, I don't know how old she is, maybe she's 13 now.
She's 13.
How much money she raised?
She's raised about $150,000 for heart and stroke. Yeah, and that was, again, that was because of a family kind of connection. You know, her grandmother had a pacemaker, her father and her mother helped to encourage her to raise money for a cause that she cared about.
She's got a business card. I remember when I met her. She hands, actually, I think the mother hands out the business card. But,
yeah, she's got a business card.
Well, obviously the internet has the potential to completely
transform.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, I think if we think about the barriers, one of the barriers is time. And if time is a big issue, then you want to be able to find your volunteer opportunities more quickly. So that's one thing. But I think virtual volunteering, we see a huge rise in the ability for people to take their skills and expertise and use it when they're at home in the evening. So you're a writer, you're a researcher, there's organizations across this country that need your skills and expertise to help them. So you can work for someone across the country or around the world by using your skills and expertise. So virtual volunteering now almost takes up, on our site, out of the 2,200 volunteer opportunities we have, I'd say that there's about 500 of them that are now virtual opportunities. So opportunities for anyone from anywhere. You can do your volunteering in your pajamas if you want.
Well,
so that's one way.
I think actually, Michael, we got some pictures of this, right? We're going to put some pictures up of GetInvolved.ca,
right.
And why don't you just, well, there it is. Click on Match with Opportunities. Tell us what it's about.
So the idea is that if your skills and your expertise are the things that matter, so first you say, what do I care about? So I care about, say, social services. What kind of skills do I have? Well, I have, I'm good at sports and recreation. Where do I live? So you type in your postal code and then you go to the Get Matched results. So all the little results that are with the red V's, those are virtual opportunities. So here's a youth relay for a live event chair. They need someone at the Cancer Society. And the idea is that from the website, you can then contact the organization, find out about them. But I think the thing that I really believe is the differentiator, what we're doing to try to make a difference, is we have something called volunteer offers. So we have a volunteer bank. And when people come to the site, they can enter in what their skills and expertise are, how they want to make a difference, and then organizations can use the same tool, our Get Matched tool, to be able to find volunteers that can help them with whatever challenges they face. We have retired CEOs, we have retired nurses, we also have young students, we have an environmental scientist who wants to help with the environment. We have all kinds of incredible people that are going to the site and saying, I'm putting up my hand, I want to make a difference. And with our Get Matched tool, people can do a better job of finding the volunteer that's right for them.
Did you have a target about how many hours you want people doing this?
Well, last year we did a partnership with Volunteer Canada. We did a series called The Power of the Hour. So what we wanted to try to get people to think about was giving their time and their talent rather than writing a check. I think the thing about checkbook philanthropy is it's really important. Obviously, we need people to give dollars, but I think that when you donate your time and your skills, you get engaged with an organization. You get to see what that organization faces, the challenges that they face, and you become very affected by the work that they do. And I think that's what we all want to do. We all want to have connections in our communities. We want to have connections to the causes that we care about. And I think volunteering is a great way to do that.
I know there was a really simple one. I went to the site, I guess, when you first launched it, which was, I don't know how many, is it a year or two ago already?
3.
3 years ago already?
3 years,
Holy
yeah.
cow. And there was something as simple as, here's a soldier who's in Afghanistan, write him a letter.
Exactly.
And I did that for a little bit, and that
That's
was,
right.
it's very rewarding.
And that's an example of virtual volunteering. And I think what's also really important now as we move forward is because social services are being cut more and more at both the provincial and the federal level, everybody is stepping up. The not-for-profit sector has huge, sort of pressures on them. So that was why we were very, very lucky in this partnership that I'm working on, and I think partnerships are a very big part of moving forward, private sector, public sector partnerships. So in this case, we have Volunteer Canada and Manulife Financial working with TVO and GetInvolved to try to create the best matching tool in order to help these organizations find what they need in order to be able to move forward.
Now, I don't want to be a downer about this, but let's hit something on the head here. People have had the experience where they want to volunteer for something, they put their name forward, they give their organization their name, their address, and all that information. Nobody follows up, or it turns out not to be a great fit. How do you avoid all that when people have great intentions, but it's somehow not reciprocated?
Yeah, I think that's a real issue, and there's certainly in the research that was done by Volunteer Canada, there are a lot of people that have had a dissatisfactory experience volunteering. And all I can say is that everybody is working, I think, with not-for-profit organizations to understand the changing face of volunteering and to understand that there's skilled, expert people. So what are the characteristics of those people? Well, there are people who don't have a lot of time, there are people who don't want to be scheduled, and there are also people who don't want to be managed. So if you understand that that's what the new volunteer is, then hopefully what we can do is start to help build tools for these organizations to be able to deal with the 21st century volunteer in a better way.
Gotcha. Okay, last minute here. If you want to get involved at getinvolved.ca,
yes.
What do? Just do that on the website, and off to the races you go?
Register. And I would really encourage people to create a volunteer offer to say how they can help. I'd encourage people to use our Get Matched tool and find out what kind of opportunities are out there. Since we launched the new site on March the 7th, we've got amazing feedback from organizations. We now have over 1,100 national organizations and regional grassroots organizations from across Canada. There's some amazing opportunities there, and there's some incredible volunteers. So I think I'm hoping that it becomes a very important resource for people moving forward.
Awesome. GetInvolved.ca.
Yeah.
One click at a time. Sign up today. Very good.
Thank you.
Dorothy Engelman, founder. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.